Shall we begin the podcast?
Okay.
I might actually edit out the bullshit beforehand because it works really well on Breaking Borders. Might not though.
Oh yeah, about
totally
that. We are
underprepared.
going to need 2 parts for Portugal as well because there's a lot there. A lot of it's just like Game of Thrones style intrigue that I could probably skip over a bit, but because it's just kind of like
Was there
missing
like
details.
dragons and
Literally everyone's an illegitimate child for some reason.
well, you're not.
No, in like Portuguese history, there's just so many illegitimate children.
What does illegitimate mean? Is that out of wedlock or just they don't actually know who the father is?
Yeah, it would be out of wedlock, which would be...
It's a bit cruel, that, isn't it? It's a bit of a nasty
most of
way
the marriages
referring to
back
it.
then would have been political, so... As if they aren't now for some people, but...
What's Google playing at? What's that a thingy of?
It's spring.
Oh, that's not fair. We just burst my bubble. I was going to say happy spring to people. Because it's not actually spring yet, is it? Is it? There's 2 different kinds of spring, isn't there? There's a geological spring and there's a...
There are many kinds of spring.
Well, yeah, I mean, you get springs in your step and springs in the suspension of your car. And springs
I don't think there's any like scientific
water.
definition of... I mean, there might be, but...
Arab Spring.
They're kind of arbitrary where we draw the line of spring. It's not like some universal constant.
Mattress Spring. Spring vest. No, sorry.
What the fuck's that?
I was thinking string vest. Spring clean.
I'm imagining just like some on the nipple to go boy.
Bedoying. I feel like I'm having a different experience on this podcast this time. Now that you're out to the world, I feel like I have a new character to kind of podcast with. I feel like actually you've been a bit different. You've been freer and more. You're looking at me in a scary way. I'm scared of you now.
I sometimes forget my face makes shapes that I just don't intend it to make. And so, like, sometimes I'll just be...
Suddenly like, oh my god, I didn't realise I was being a pentagon, sorry.
No.
Oh shit,
Like,
triangle time.
I'll just be like fucking giving the nastiest look to someone and then realize, oh yeah, I have facial expressions. I need to fucking...
Elwing the polyhedra.
And now take on my final form, a dodecahedron.
Yeah, I'm not fully editing this out. Our intros. This is the informal podcast, isn't it?
I can't research that much every 2 weeks.
Yeah, I feel like we're gonna. I don't know what's going to happen tonight because I don't. We have taken absolutely no responsibility for this episode.
Okay. So we begin?
Yeah, have you thought of an intro yet? Take it. Meow. Oh, yeah, I forgot I'd had a haircut. Sorry. Pardon me.
Hello, bad influences. I am Firebolt.
Are you talking to me?
I'm just generally. I think most of the people that listen to this podcast are wrong uns.
And I am... Yeah, it feels weird. I am the Orbiter. But what the fuck is the Orbiter? It's like... Why don't we just use our names?
Are you high?
Hi!
Just to preface that... Oh yeah, by the way, welcome to Breaking Bollocks, episode 17.
9.
Ooh, we're getting on.
I'm nearly an octogenarian.
Oof. Oh, I forgot. I've not really planned anything for it, but we are going to need to plan something for our 100th episode at some point.
We are. What's that going to be about?
Oh, I haven't got like a subject for it. I just thought let's invite a bunch of guests and have a clusterfuck.
Maybe. I mean, it is going to be like almost 2 years away.
Oh fuck! I forget. Well, I mean, the way last year went, like that's no time at all.
Well, it is.
We are
sometime.
recording this on the 1-year anniversary of me leaving school, and on the 10-year anniversary of Nerdcubed, which is quite a big part of why this channel even exists, on my part at least. So for that reason, I am already about 1.5 drinks in because I was watching his stream and they had a drinking game for every time Matt mentioned politics, and I also have a penis on my elbow because
again,
reasons. Yeah.
We had peri-peri chicken kebabs, didn't we? And my
I just fancied a kebab.
Yeah, I couldn't find any doner kebab meat. I'm gonna have to go to somewhere that's likely to sell it. Like I couldn't believe I couldn't find any doner kebab meat in Tesco.
Yeah, it's like Chab Central.
Yeah, I mean, I bet they do it. Well, actually, they will do it at our local, what they call a chipper around here, fish and chip shop, chippy. Because but it'll be the frozen variety that you just shove in the microwave, which is not a proper kebab. It's like you want one of them that's been roasting on a spit all evening, and is sweating.
See what I heard? I've never actually been like on a proper night out because I'm.
Oh, hang on, just a second. I'll just.
Well, I have been on night outs, but not like on like a
tiny little violin.
Not the type of night out where you go from bar to bar and...
You've not been on a pub crawl?
I've not gotten a kebab on a night out. I think that's the bar.
Yeah. Well, I mean, by the time the pubs are open, you'll be legally allowed to.
The thing that I've heard is that miraculously, somehow, a kebab doesn't fall all over the place, even when you've, like, had 10 drinks or something.
Yeah, it's weird that. It is a bit weird that. I mean, the thing is, most people with a kebab tend to fill it with, like, salad and stuff, as well as the meat and maybe chili sauce, but you don't tend to do salad, do you?
Nah.
You don't have to, so... But, have we started?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is a podcast.
Yeah.
Shall we start on the news?
Yeah, go on then.
Oh, what to begin with? Well, I mean, I know what's at the front of my mind.
Nazis?
I mean...
Kind of.
Yeah. The police bill that the Tories have probably already voted in by now, by the time this goes out.
Actually, I read an article today, I think it was in the Observer, it's been reported that I think between 500 or 600 reports of sexual misconduct by police officers in the last year.
Mm-hmm. Like...
Including sexual assault of a rape victim.
Yeah, I mean, I know that the laws in the US are pretty fucking terrifying for that. There might be a similar precedent in the UK, but, like, there's very little to protect people in police custody from that sort of thing.
I mean, this might seem like inflammatory and alarmist, but I just want to put this in a frame of reference here. So this woman goes missing, and it turns out she's been murdered by a police officer. Yeah.
Yeah, kidnapped and murdered. I mean, I think that's still technically alleged, but like,
and
yeah,
the government's response to that has been to increase police powers of not just shutting down protests after they threw women to the floor at that protest last weekend, but also putting undercover police officers into clubs. So
the stuff about protests is really alarming. Basically, it means that they can legally arrest you if they think that you're being too noisy and that's a disruption to people around you. Even though the whole point of a protest is literally to disrupt. But it also means, like, if you were, say, protesting at, like, office building and disrupting their business.
That hasn't gone through yet, has it? Or...
It's gone to its second reading, I think, last I heard.
Yeah.
But the Tories have a majority. It's going to go through. We live in a dystopian nightmare. Welcome to...
Well, I don't know. Can the Lords still not stop things?
I mean, technically, but they're not fucking going to, are they?
I don't know.
But basically, yeah, that's kind of making a mockery of our civil liberties if they even existed before that point. But something that I don't think's been mentioned as much, which is also very alarming, is they've been given new powers to basically seize the property of gypsy and traveller communities, which is just openly racist policy here.
I don't know if it's just me, but the thought of them pumping money into and creating more opportunities to utilise undercover police officers in public places, is that not secret police?
I mean, I think there is a way to identify them. It's not undercover police, it's plainclothes police, which are somewhat different because they need to be able to be identified in a crowd.
By whom?
Well, say there's like a raid going on, they'd want to know who the other police are. So that I think they do have to wear like an armband in a lot of places, or some sort of identifying thing.
Oh, so right, so the women know which ones to steer clear of.
No, it's so the police know not to shoot them.
No, so the women know which ones to steer clear of.
I don't know what the indicator is, but yeah, you probably wouldn't know in most cases.
The ones with the armbands on.
Yeah, but I don't know what the indicator is, or if that's just like for specific types of operations where they would be shooting people.
Yeah. Fun.
Or if that's just America, because a lot of what I hear about the police does come from America, but like I think that gets disguised in like a lot of our institutions are quite similar in quite disturbing ways, like those concentration camps at the border, which are fundamentally concentration camps. We have them as well. We just call them detention centers, where I think thousands of children get housed. And recently, well, not that recently, made a conscious decision to turn away migrant children who are without parents.
Oh, yeah, that was another one I read today as well. That I can't remember the exact details, but it was there's a Nigerian bloke that's being deported because his paperwork wasn't in order. But he's basically a skilled immunologist type expert that we kind of have a shortage of in this country at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, if the pandemic has shown anything, it's that global cooperation is kind of necessary in a global system to survive, but...
Oh, yeah, but as long as we've got enough, or more than enough nuclear weapons, then...
Oh yeah, we're increasing our nuclear weapon stockpile. Why the fuck? It's not the Cold War, guys. Like...
Because of the global threat from China.
Oh yeah, against Hong Kong, which they've done a bunch of shitty things too, but like they're literally passing this, I think, in the same bill.
You can't really
to crack down on protest.
Britain's not really in a. I mean, did you see actually the discussion between the first discussion between America and China diplomats?
Oh yeah.
Since Biden became president.
I kind of get a lot of sort of
I love the way they're like
politics stories secondhand.
You can't tell her. America doesn't speak from a position of power on anything. Really,
and then it was like I think Biden
unless by
called
power you mean
Putin a killer, which He fundamentally is, but then like Putin basically
What?
responded with "takes one to know one."
yeah. It's funny.
But I don't get.
I'm working on anxiety though, and I'm reading a really good book at the moment. You should maybe give it a try. It's called The Fear. I think it's called The Fear Bubble. Guy called Ant Middleton used to be in the SAS, but he climbed Everest, and he basically talks about how well, lots of things to do with fear, but how a lot of the world at the moment is basically in a continuous state of anxiety because of all of the horrors that we're being kind of fed all the time. And it's important to know this stuff, but when it kind of just paralyzes you with fear so that you can't actually do anything about it or enjoy your everyday life as a result, it's kind of, because most of us that are listening to this, at least 99.9% of the time have a relatively easy existence, but we live with this heightened state of anxiety because of all the shit that's going on. And it's like, I think, we need to do something about it, but living in daily anxiety over it is not effective in any way. Do you know what I mean? I don't know what's ahead.
I'm hopeful for the Scottish election.
Well, I haven't heard anything about Nicola Sturgeon in the last couple of days, and this might have all blown over by the time this podcast goes out. But I know she was found guilty of misleading the Scottish Parliament, and she went quiet for a day or two.
I mean, I think I've heard about that. The sort of, I guess, council committee that made that decision.
Do you know what?
We're fairly partisan in that, but that might.
Do you know what I don't understand about that ruling? That the wording of it is that they've said that she did mislead Parliament, but not knowingly. And it's the knowingly
Meanwhile,
part.
We look over to the UK Parliament, where several times they've been found guilty of misleading Parliament.
Finished yet.
And basically every time they open their mouths, they lie.
Yeah, good point. But to me, I mean, it's the knowingly part of it that they say would be a breaking of the ministerial code, in which case there would be good cause for people to be calling for her to resign. But how do you mislead someone not knowingly? It's like, well, she either if it's not knowingly, then you're not misleading someone, because if it's not knowingly, then you're being misled as well. You have to be the one that's changing the information to mislead someone.
I still don't get how a story about Alex Salmond being a rapist has been made into Nicola Sturgeon must resign.
Well, she's a woman.
Yeah, it's just so fucking. I mean, it's very clear that the reason it's.
By the way, if anyone out there is in any doubt whatsoever about my views on it, when I said she's a woman, I didn't mean that she deserves it because she's a woman. I meant that's the reason why society is treating her the way that it is.
Also, it's politically expedient for a lot of British media who.
It's bloody convenient timing-wise as well, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, it is basically. There's an election coming in a couple of months, which I'm kind of actually, like I was saying, I'm somewhat hopeful for. I think Greens could make some good gains, and I've learned some more stuff about the political system from a video by my friend who I recommend.
Do tell.
Houstonium. She did a video on Scottish devolution.
Right.
It was good fun. And plus, now I actually understand the voting system a bit more.
Could you explain it to me, or is that something best done off podcast? Because, I mean, the English and Americans might be jealous of our voting system if they know how it works.
The voting system for the Scottish elections is mixed member proportional. Essentially what that means is...
Is that not the one that you always said you really favoured?
I normally go for single transferable vote.
Right.
Just because I like the ranking system, because I don't really have one political party that I like over any other.
Right.
I mean, green's like my
This
probably favourite.
This is May the 6th, isn't it? Is it May the 6th?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically,
Our polling station's changed.
Basically, how it works is you do your constituency vote, and you do so that's for a person, your constituency vote.
Right.
And then you do your regional vote, that's for a party.
Right.
And so for your region, say there's I think there's 6 seats in our area. I'm not entirely sure, it might be 7, that are constituency seats. Say SNP wins in all of them, but they only really get 40% of the vote overall in Aberdeen.
I'm lost already. No, I mean I'm lost on the difference between what's the constituency and the regional vote. What's the difference?
Well, the regional vote, they basically use to...
We get one vote in each of these two, do we?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
The regional vote, basically, they go down a list and basically select people in that region to make up so that region, basically as close as possible to the vote share in that region.
Right.
That's the total MSPs being sent off. So if one party does really well in the constituency vote, like SNP quite often does, they tend to do less well in the regional vote because they're trying to make up those that came in second or third place in various places.
Right. Okay.
But they use a very sort of difficult to explain mathematics. I mean, it's fairly sort of simple.
All I really need to know is what my choices are and how they work. Basically, I'm going to have to cast 2 votes, am I?
I mean, if you want to do a tactical vote, do that for the constituency one, I would say, and vote for the party you actually want in for your regional vote.
Right. Okay. Because constituency, is that the one that ends up sitting in Holyrood?
Both do.
Okay.
They basically make it up so unless the party has overwhelming support, they couldn't get a majority like they do in Westminster.
Right.
Which is actually something that's kind of up for grabs here because the SNP are still very popular. They've been slightly knocked down by the whole Alex Salmond thing. Whether they could actually get an overall majority in a system that's designed to make sure that that's very difficult to do.
But I mean, any of that, even if there was any justification for any of the criticism that's being directed at the SNP and Nicola Sturgeon, I've never understood, in a similar way with the Clinton stuff that went on, I've never understood why something so disconnected from the actual way the country is treated is held as important enough to derail an entire party or election. It's like...
I mean, I could see how, the person themselves, doing bad stuff. I mean, really what's more revealing than the actual affair with Bill Clinton is how he threw Monica Lewinsky under the bus. I mean, that and, everything else Clinton did during his years, but...
Well, yeah, but have there been any that weren't shit?
Yeah, see, I kind of find that, a bit of a weird defense of US politicians, because it's sort of if you make that argument the lesser of two evils to vote for someone, if you're not doing everything to you can to argue for changing that system, then you're just wanting you're wanting the two evils to be there constantly, which is kind of fundamentally on what I think the American and British political system really works on.
Anyway, what else is happening in the news apart from Europe's getting getting a third wave because of vaccination politics, and that meaning that we're probably not going to be able to go on holiday in Europe this summer? Pardon me.
I mean, as we could with anyway. Fucking Brexit as well. But personal news, I might be moving out after the summer.
Yes. I mean, until we started thinking about that, that's actually a fairly weird thing for me and Mum, because as I said to her, that would be the first time since we got married almost 20 years ago that we'll have spent more than a night or two on our own in a house.
Yeah.
It's a.
I mean, I'm not entirely sure what that's gonna happen with that just yet. So, like,
yeah,
that's not for sure.
Yeah.
But
I'm not expecting anything. I mean, Jesus, how are you going to get out of bed in the morning?
Well, yeah, that's what I have to figure out.
Joe, funnily enough, because it's Saturday as we're recording this, I didn't set my alarm this morning, and I still woke up at between 10 past and 8:15. My alarm in the week is usually set for 8:15 at the moment.
I don't know how I got up at like noon when like I went to sleep at 5 a.m. But yeah,
well, that's the problem, isn't it? Going to sleep at 5 a.m. is the
sometimes. But yeah, that might mean that the way the channel works might change in the future, but I do not know.
Oh, we can do it over Zoom.
Yeah, I mean, it depends how high quality you want my audio to be, but
well, no one else on the network gives
no
shit. So. No offense, everyone. But actually, funnily enough, we've been struggling along recording Skype, and I've only just realised that Zoom, you can record separate audio tracks for each speaker, just using the software itself.
Yeah, there's an option to record the meetings, I think.
Which, anyway, that's technical behind the scenes stuff. So,
yeah.
So what we're going to talk about for the next hour and a half or so?
I mean, if you want to give it a little bit of time, I think that Meghan and Harry interview came out since we did our last podcast.
Do we? I mean, do I?
Well,
I mean, it's a long time ago now.
More sort of
nearly a month between episodes now.
What I find more interesting there is really
Piers Morgan quitting.
No, I mean, he's a fucking toad.
I know, but it was satisfying to watch.
I mean, he'll just find somewhere else to be a parasite, so...
Yeah.
You know, when he's not busy hacking dead girls' phones.
Yes, absolutely. It does seem to have turned the whole snowflake argument on its head, really, though, doesn't it? It's like...
See, what I find...
You obviously can't take criticism.
I mean, it's sort of I think the thing that inflamed the British press really is accusations of racism, which absolutely, the British press, pretty fucking racist. Like most of the publications, major publications, even the ones that you would think would be better, have been guilty of some fairly fucking flagrant racism. I saw... Oh yeah, I think it was like an editor from The Sun. It might have been I think it was The Sun. It might have been The Telegraph. They're all fucking shite. Saying, never in the 36 years I've been here have I ever seen something as terrible as this. And then one from 34 years ago talking about basically a black person going to, I think it was Cambridge, as if it was the end of the world.
Yeah. Yeah, it's there's an advert on Sky at the moment about journalism, and I can't remember exactly, as usual, can't remember exactly what it's about. But I just, every time the woman comes on, they're talking about journalism and journalists seeking to get the truth about things, and this woman comes on towards the end going, in truth, I think that's what every journalism has always wanted. Every journalist has always wanted. Is to tell the truth about things. And it's like, do you know what journalism is? It's like, how can you can't possibly claim that every journalist wants to tell the truth.
I mean,
if you know,
as long as there's private interests involved, there's going to be some kind of conflict of interest there. But even when there's not, for like the BBC or papers that are mostly propped up by donations from readers or like by subscriptions, they still have pretty ridiculous biases to try and I don't really know what it is with the BBC that makes it particularly weird right now. I mean, I think it did used to be a lot more neutral, even 10 years ago.
Well, they've been under threat. I mean, the trouble is, I mean, they're independent in terms of their sort of the way it's run isn't sort of controlled by the government, but the government kind of has the say about how it's funded, don't they? They kind of have the power to remove the funding, and a lot of people. It's a weird one. I'm not sure how I feel about it, to be honest. The whole license fee.
It was a very strange argument on Twitter this week about. I think it was one of the presenters. I think it was two of them, but they particularly went after Naga Munchetty because she's a woman of color, because that's what the internet does.
Didn't she have to apologise for something a few years ago? She got almost sacked over something.
Oh, I don't fucking. But basically, there was a government minister with the British flag in the background, and I think she smirked during the interview, and somehow that's like something like that people are crying treason over because this country is a fucking ridiculous joke.
But you know what I mean, though? They're the same people that go on about snowflakes being offended about stuff, and it's like. Do you really not get the irony? You know, it's like take a chill pill. Yeah, I think this is me venting. I kind of, as I say, I've been working on my anxiety levels, and I've been doing really well this week, and I'm not actually that anxious at the moment. But
also, the more interesting conversation I've had, particularly with like you and Mum, around
who's you and Mum?
What?
Who's you and Mum? Is this a guy I know? What?
I'm not going to dignify that.
You just did.
With this Sarah Everard killing, and
I had nothing to do with it.
Police bill. No, but like conversations that I think were already going on, particularly in America, around either defunding or abolishing the police.
I learned something from you.
Okay. Yeah, no, I always enjoy the conversations, even if I don't necessarily agree. It's just like...
I mean, I think we came to... I think we should maybe give some background to it. I think that... It wasn't a heated conversation, was it? It was a lively debate, I would say.
I think it's because I stand behind the, I guess, sort of slogan, ACAB, which stands for All Cops Are Bastards, or if you don't want to swear, All Cops Are Bad.
Yeah, and I think after having looked into it afterwards, because I'll be honest with you, after that conversation, I'm pretty sure there's probably somebody listening to this now that's thinking along the same lines that we were thinking when we heard you saying that, is that it's inflammatory, and it's kind of, well, I mean, it is inflammatory, but it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
But it's at the end of that conversation, I found myself coming away and doing a bit of a search online to just to be sure, because it struck me as quite a strong sentiment, and I thought I've got to keep basically being in teacher training. I've got to kind of look for the signs of radicalization, and it was one of those phrases that I wasn't sure about, so I just wanted to see where it came from, just to kind of find out for myself where it came from. And I was surprised to find out that it's not about individuals, is it? It's I think that's where it comes across as quite shocking, is the All Cops Are Bastards thing isn't about individual
but
people.
It's sort of, and I would say this is true for many institutions, where you don't do something about that. And I think it's gotten to the stage, or a lot of people have looked into the origins of police enough that they think that the police institution itself, if you're a part of that, if you don't reject that, then you're implicit in the oppression that they gender.
What I learned from it is that I mean, I would say that we definitely agree on all the things that we discussed. The only thing that we didn't really necessarily agree on was the way to fight it, or the way to approach it. But having said that, having looked at the origins of the ACAB movement and the fact that it is throughout society, you see it graffitied on walls and stuff. It was a big part of the punk movement in the 1970s, and it's always been something that's been associated with anti-fascism, isn't it? But looking into the history of the police, and I think one of the reasons that people perhaps are quite defensive about it nowadays is because the police aren't just what they were originally set up to be. It's kind of their job has been conflated with lots of other jobs that should be being done by someone else. You know what I mean, you were saying about sort of, the defunding thing. It's not simply a question of just stopping funding the police. But it's a question of diverting the funds to social services and a lot of the things that should be being done by people who aren't there to enforce the law.
I mean, this is a statistic from the US, but I'm sure many people will attest to how mental health services in this country are also falling apart. But there are more mentally ill people in Rikers Prison in New York than there are in all 14 mental hospitals across the state of New York.
Yeah, I am going to bring up an article that I was reading about because it's It's talking about the history of the police and what they were actually originally formed for. But
it's sort of, as sort of looking back at protests throughout history, they are basically used to be the enforcing arm of whatever government's in charge at the time, so they're generally quite aggressive towards protest movements, quite often outright suppressing or even murdering people in protest movements around the world.
Yeah, it's a bit of a sort of a... But I mean, the original, when Robert Peel set up the original Peelers, as it were, what became the police force, it was basically to squash industrial action, wasn't it? Through violent means. Oh, I didn't realise he was a prime minister.
And that must make sense.
He created the modern police force, but it was originally... hang on. Why was the police force formed? Here we go. To enforce the law, to ensure the safety, health, and possessions of citizens, to prevent crime and civil disorder. That's the part that I'm not comfortable with, is the civil disorder part.
Yeah. And also, the next sentence is quite important. Use of force legitimised by the state via the monopoly on violence. Essentially, I mean, there's loads of different sort of... there's various different philosophers on this, but the idea of violence being something that limits your agency, that's kind of what the police are fundamentally set up to do. Rather than it just being like, oh, you hit someone, but like there's plenty of forms of violence.
Yeah, it's... It's well worth having a look into, though, if you want to look into the history of the formation of the police force and stuff. And I'm not going to say that they don't do a lot of work that is good and that needs to be done. What I would say is it needs to be done by somebody else.
Yeah, someone else who isn't given powers to inflict violence on people.
Yeah. It's a conflict of interests, apart from anything, because you can't give the kind of social care that a lot of so-called criminals are in need of if your primary objective is to uphold and enforce the law.
You think about the biggest criminals in this country, half of them are government or they pay the government.
They are a tool of the state.
So they're not the sort of people that are going to get cracked down upon by police. Instead, it's women, black people, gay people, traveller communities.
I thought it was really off the whole way that situation with the Sarah Everard vigil progressed from beforehand. And I'm sure Cressida Dick, what is she? Head of the...
Piece of shit. Yeah. Head of Met Police.
Yeah. I'm sure her and Priti Patel had been in cahoots about this beforehand.
Oh, she reports directly to the secretary. So.
But like the day or two before the vigil happened, Priti Patel was saying publicly and to the police that they weren't to allow any exceptions to the COVID laws for protests or for public gatherings. But as soon as the police actually acted on that, in line with her advice, she turned around and said it was too heavy-handed and it was wrong, and everybody condemned them for it. And people are calling for Cressida Dick to resign. Cressida Dick's saying, "I'm not going to resign." But I've got a funny feeling Priti Patel would have said to her beforehand, "Look, we want you to crack down on this, but we can't be seen to condone what happens. But if you're called to resign, which you probably will be, we're not going to pursue it. We're not going to push for it as well. So if you just stick to your guns and it'll blow over."
I think it's that people think that the police genuinely have a way to peacefully disperse people. It's like, that's not the whole deal. They will drag you about.
I've never understood kettling.
No, it's basically provoke a response so you have a legitimate reason to arrest someone.
But I don't. Well, what I don't understand about it is I don't understand how it can be justified. I don't understand the justification for it.
For kind of a circular logic of, let's cordon off this protest so that people can go about their business outside of it, but then make it really violent by basically forcing people into a smaller and smaller space.
Yeah, but because I'm sure, is the idea not behind it that you're increasing the pressure on an area of the crowd so that they're more likely to become more violent?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically to get an excuse to arrest them.
Increasing the temperature of a protest, if you like, kind of upping the ante.
I mean, they'll still arrest you anyway, but I mean, especially with this new policing bill, they can basically arrest you for shouting. I mean, if you think that protest that we went to in 2019 for
World Earth Day, we'd have been arrested for that, wouldn't we?
I mean, the people chanting, people doing a conga line, like if they were seen to be disruptive through noise.
And the thing is, that could be any one person in an office that's within earshot of that who's being put off their work can phone the police and say this is causing a nuisance.
The police could even place someone there just to say that they're being disturbed.
They wouldn't do that, would they?
I remember seeing stories about...
You've got to be pretty idealistic to think that that's not going to happen.
The police putting undercover members inside the civil rights movement, basically to see what they were up to. and just basically finding nothing. And a lot of the speeches at the time referenced that, saying like, "There's any police in the room, put your hands up," and sort of thing. It's like, you see, they never do it.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes, how do we get onto the actual topic, or is there anything else on your mind?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I thought we had we not started to try to. Do we have a topic?
No, I kind of just wanted to talk about the police a bit more, because I feel like it's a conversation people need to have with themselves, at least, if not with others.
Well, so responsibility. What about it?
Well, I mean, I think we have very different ideas, probably, of what our responsibilities are.
I think a lot of people, and it's myself included, find it very easy to conflate responsibility with fault and blame. Yeah, that's quite a
failing to meet your responsibilities, because that's where it sort of causes an issue.
No, I think like if something bad happens, or if something is causing a bad situation, when people talk about whose responsibility is that, I think quite often they mean who's to blame for it, rather than who has the power to do something about it. And I suppose the two can be interlinked, because you could say that if somebody who has the power to change a situation isn't actively doing that, you could kind of blame them for that situation continuing. But they are separate things. I
feel like that's often too much talked about in very absolute terms, when, like, usually it's a lot of people that could have done something along the way, but alone they wouldn't have really gotten very far.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people that have a lot of power that are responsible for a lot of things, sure, but I guess this is sort of a smaller scale version of that, and hopefully less tied to guilt. What do you think your responsibilities are as a parent?
To who?
I guess sort of principally to your kids. Or I guess since I'm here, to me.
I suppose to set a good example. I don't know, to kind of pass on the benefit of my experiences through setting an example.
I mean, you've set an example.
Yeah.
In the same way William Wallace's head sets an example on the tower.
Yeah, but I mean, you have to take responsibility for the things you say. And saying that to me is something you have to take responsibility for the consequences of.
I think you set a pretty good example. I mean, you
very quickly changed your tone there.
No, because I make lots of jokes at your expense, because I know that you at least are conceptually aware that I do have some level of respect for you on a real level. But like, you're doing what you love. You're a musician. I think that's a good example.
I think the best example that you can set to anyone is to do as best as you can what makes you happy. I mean, it's not as simple as that. Obviously, there are pressures and things that I don't know. You just got to. I think first and foremost, your responsibility has to be to yourself, because And that might seem like a selfish approach, but to me, it's actually not, because it to think of that as a selfish approach kind of assumes that looking after your own best interests will be to the detriment of others. Whereas actually it's because I am looking after my own best interests that I look after the people around me as well and try to keep them happy as well.
I mean,
I can't keep other people happy, but I certainly don't want to bring them down.
You can't march on an empty stomach. You need to sort of be able to be healthy in yourself before you are able to help other people. I mean, it's not as simple as that, because I don't think I'll ever be perfectly healthy, but I still strive to help people.
What is perfectly healthy, though? I mean, perfection's an unattainable ideal anyway.
Reasonably healthy. I don't know. Like,
I don't think you're doing bad.
I haven't gone outside for more than 2 weeks.
Yeah, but a lot of
right, that's a lie,
haven't as well.
Wait, is that a lie? No, that is a lie. I did go outside last week.
But you would have been, if it hadn't been for lockdown. You would have been in and out of uni, so...
Maybe.
My responsibilities. I don't know. It's just to live.
Well, yeah, I mean, on that front, do you feel like you have, I guess, rather pressures to provide for people?
You're making me think about things I don't tend to think about. They're not separate things to me. That, like, the idea of doing the shopping and kind of the things that I do that you might think of as things that I do because I'm under pressure to look after a family. I don't see them as looking after a family. I see them as looking after myself.
You're part of the family, so I mean that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's a bit like, on a bigger scale, the whole society thing is that you've got to look after yourself to look after society, because you've got to respect your own values and ideals, and uphold them, rather than being held to somebody else's ideals and values for the greater good, so-called greater good. That doesn't really, that went off in a different, that went off on a tangent there. But do you know what I mean? It's like you're part of a bigger group and you have a certain amount of responsibility for that group, but only in that your responsibility is to your contribution to that group, not to the group as a whole.
I mean, if you see looking after yourself as like a number one priority, which I think is fairly reasonable, but in terms of doing that before looking at the group, especially if you're someone who maybe can't provide for themselves, I mean, like, I don't think you could make bread from scratch, like, without, and I mean from scratch, meaning you have to go the wheat for the flour. You rely on other people fulfilling some sort of role in society.
Yeah, but I mean, I suppose that kind of brings you to the question of how well you would survive if society completely broke down.
I would be dead. The only thing going for me is
survival's a surprisingly strong drive, though.
The only thing going for me is I'm relatively skinny, so I wouldn't make a good meal, and I'll do what people tell me if it serves my best interests.
I mean, unless you're thinking in terms of wild animals, are you thinking that people would turn to cannibalism then?
I mean, like, I don't know, but it depends what kind of breakdown of society you're talking about.
Yeah. That's a weird one, isn't it, to think
I mean,
about, like...
in my ideal breakdown of society, I would probably actually be quite well off and happy, but...
Funny in that as soon as you say well off, I instantly think money. That isn't how I want to think, but that was the impression that leapt into my head straight away. I was going to say something along the lines of accusing you of not being a capitalist, but like sort of why is being well off important? Because I was assuming that well off meant wealthy.
Well, it's a wealth of a kind, having
Yeah.
friends that are happy and healthy, and I'm happy and healthy, and everyone's just kind of chilling, and no one's trying to kill me.
What about immediate responsibilities?
Like right now?
Well, I don't know, over the next sort of couple of years, I suppose.
That's not very immediate.
It is when you're nearly 50.
Okay. I mean, I think legally to keep my scholarship, I do have to finish my degree, so that's something. I don't entirely know the terms of that. I should probably look that up, but I mean, so I have a responsibility to at least pass that, and I think I have a responsibility to myself somewhat. I put pressures on myself to do well in that, which I seem to be doing, I guess.
Yeah, it's so weird, wasn't it? Thinking about the word responsibility, it stems from the word response. So, I suppose it's like a social pressure. Do you think responsibility? But is it an absolute, or is it something that different people define in different ways in terms of? Is responsibility something personal? Or do you think it's something which people try to impose on others? Which is why I think I think people do, and I think that's why I kind of equate it to sometimes being misunderstood for fault or blame, that they're looking to put responsibility onto someone else rather than take it for themselves, rather than owning situations.
It depends. Yeah, I mean, I guess like the types of responsibilities you're going to have in a certain role are going to be determined by the kind of society you live in. I imagine the responsibilities of parenthood have changed a great deal after the Industrial Revolution, especially as now most children survive past the age of 5, which is kind of a given, I think, nowadays.
Yeah. But there was a time as well when there was a kind of a societal responsibility with conscription, wasn't there? That it was, if you were of a certain age, it was your responsibility to serve your country in the forces.
Do you feel like we have any responsibility to the country we live in separate from the people in the country? Or do you feel like we should? I guess because we are expected to. If you earn enough, pay tax.
I don't actually think one of those things exists that you're referring to, even though you use the same word. Do you mean the state, like the governing kind of organization?
I mean,
because I think the people are the country.
Okay, but like,
I think everybody's view on that is going to be essentially the same, but their methods and ways of achieving it are going to differ based on their political affiliations, because our responsibility, what we deem to be our responsibility, and how we react to different ways that the government acts is different from what other people would think of as responsibility towards their country. Some people would see it as a responsibility to not criticise the government as much as we do because it weakens society.
Oh, fuck it. I want to weaken the society. It's shit.
Yeah, but my point is that it's because you have a sense of social responsibility that you feel that way, because you feel like it's your responsibility to do what's best for the people.
I want to, I suppose, do what's best for people that I care about. And also people just that I don't know. I would like to know that they're doing all right. But also there is a sort of selfish component to that. It's like the country and society we live in, not very hospitable to my kind of people. So
your kind of people.
I mean, I'm talking about trans people, kind of, but you know, it's this country's a fucking nightmare for that. But
indeed, I'll tell you what I've been finding quite interesting is noticing the overdue redressing of the balance, and probably not definitely not to enough of an extent yet, with all sorts of things like racial things, gender things, in culture I'm talking about, like in TV and film and stuff. I was watching an episode of the original series of Star Trek, which earlier on, which was obviously back in the 60s when it first came out, was pretty ahead of its time in terms of challenging societal norms, but just hearing the language being used, it feels, I'm noticing things a lot more how they were biased.
But like, I mean, that's sort of supposed to, I suppose, show some ideal vision of the future. But like, when you go back to the 60s, by the way, I'm pretty sure there were racist policies in NASA at the time, but like the control room was quite diverse, because when you're doing a space, you need a lot of different people with
when you're doing a space.
Yeah, when you're doing a space. You know, that's all what the Apollo program was about. Do a space. And you need people who know what they're talking about, and they're not going to be from one particular class of society necessarily. I don't know what the fuck I'm on about now, but I think you get my gist.
Yeah, we're going to struggle, aren't we?
Yeah, I'm very pissed.
Are you really? That's not very responsible of you.
Oh, yeah, I mean...
Please don't bomb it.
In terms of immediate responsibilities, it is sort of to check on myself and make sure I'm not doing stupid things that will hurt myself in the long run, or hurt other people in the long run.
Yeah.
Or the short term.
Yeah. I've got to make sure
okay?
you... Yeah, I just don't want you to be ill.
I'm fine.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like we're failing at this episode. That's a really irresponsible thing to say in the middle of an episode, isn't it?
I've had a really great time. I don't know what you're fucking talking about. Be kind to yourself, you shithead.
Be kind to yourself, you shithead. Yeah.
That's basically our relationship in a nut hell. Nut hell? Freudian slip.
Yeah. Oh, I've been in a few nut hells in my time.
And okay.
Right, okay, so...
Well,
actions and consequences.
You're going to have new responsibilities as a teacher if you're not struck off things before that.
Struck off things?
You know,
Struck off things. What kind of things would I be struck off?
a building.
I'm not even on the what is it called?
Is there a teacher's register?
There's a certification.
Okay.
But you don't get it until you've done your probationary year, which means
name for a qualification.
I'll be teaching full time. I'll be doing placement work next year, and then I'll be doing a year's probation on an actual job, which will then provide me with the certification. GCT. There's an acronym that means something about the General Teaching Council of Scotland. GTCS, I think. These are the things I'm learning about at the moment. I've only got to keep it for about 15 to 20 years.
Yeah, it's slightly sort of strange because I think
You're slightly strange.
Like the way I'm looking at universities, well, I mean, with age, it's going to be quite a bit different. And just a general degree, it's going to be quite a bit different. But also just you going in at third year, it's a lot smaller commitment, I suppose. And like this coming in at first year and maybe staying on for a postgraduate, like...
Well, I don't know that I'm not going to stay on for a postgraduate yet, but I suspect not.
But like this is going to make up a much bigger proportion of my life so far.
Yeah. But in retrospect, not necessarily. I mean, if you think I did over 2 years at the academy originally, I've done several years of part-time open university study. I've done over a year of college sound production study as well. So I'm kind of, I mean, we say third year, but I've actually done a lot more than 3 years, really. It's going to be weird next year for me because I'm going to be on placement for like 18 weeks, but I've also still got to do the other modules, the other courses. So I don't know how I'm going to manage that. I mean, one of them's performance, so that'll be relatively easy to kind of squeeze in, but as for everything else, I've no idea.
Yeah, that's fourth year for you.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to write a dissertation, do you?
No, but you spend most of the year writing lesson plans, doing self-evaluations.
Piss fest. No dissertation, piss fest.
What's a dissertation?
Yeah, it's something my friend complained about.
It's just a long essay, isn't it, really?
Yeah, a really fucking long essay, though.
When you say really fucking long, what do you mean?
Like 10,000 words and it has to be polished.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've
written... I actually, the notes for Breaking Borders are already longer than that, I think.
I mean, I've already done one 2,000 word essay, and I've got another one due.
Yeah.
So in total, I mean, if you've got a reasonable amount of time to do it.
Yeah, but students are terrible at planning, so they don't.
They get better. First year, actually, it's always been widely understood that first year is not really a time for working. It's a time for settling in and getting used to independence. which is your first year fucked, isn't it?
I mean, some people definitely seem to be in the spirit of that. But I do try to put some work in. Although the fucking grading for things can be really inconsistent. Because like I'll put so much work into one thing, and unless it's German, I usually get A's, but it's just varying degrees of A's. So not to brag, I'm sure that'll change in like third and fourth year. But
well, I don't know. You're pretty thorough.
Thanks.
Well, I'm just thinking about how much time you spent on your world government stuff.
Yeah, I do that stuff to procrastinate.
Yeah. But you do it thoroughly. I mean, when you procrastinate, you fucking procrastinate.
Yeah, but see, with that, I keep adding stuff to it.
Are you still doing it?
No, not anymore. But when I was doing it, I kept adding stuff to it, like, oh, this new type of election, and oh, let's change where the venues are, and oh, let's produce ballots.
Do you ever like completely restart so that you can try a different system?
No, fuck that. No, it's just a complex mess.
You're better off just playing something like Civ 6, aren't you, really? Because it's at least somebody else is doing the kind of planning.
I mean, I think, like, I'm sort of, in terms of how much I prepare for that sort of stuff, I'm sort of built for, like, tabletop RPGs, like D&D and stuff, because, like, I mean, that's essentially just, like, cooperating on procrastinating, I think.
Do you know what I'd kind of... Oh, fuck it. This episode is very random. It's just... I just think we should just have a chat. So the idea occurred to me about...
It's like those Badil and Skinner things, though. Like, the word...
I'm on one of their videos.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think they have a word as, like, a jumping off point. They just start a conversation and then that's the show. But we just have a word as a jumping off point and then have a conversation that is loosely tied to it.
Have I told you that story?
The Badil and Skinner one?
Yeah.
I think so, because we watched it.
Yeah, about me going on my own.
Oh, yeah.
A fucking brilliant day. I felt so free.
Oh.
What? I'd spent years in the wrong relationship and we broke up and I thought, fuck it, I'm still going to go to the show, and went anyway. No, I thought, it might seem irresponsible, but I wonder, somebody probably already does it, but setting up a Zoom room to record a podcast and just putting the link out and just seeing who turns up for a chat.
Yeah, I mean, and it's sort of...
And people just like, sort of, you just have the room open, record the whole thing, and if nobody comes in, you're just having a chat. But it's just like, I don't know.
I think the atmosphere we strive to have, at least for Breaking Bollocks, is that of a pub conversation.
We could, that's kind of, we stole that off the Mouse's Head, but they tend to talk about stuff rather than just rambling.
We're talking about stuff.
Are we, though?
We talked about the police today. We're talking about loads of stuff. We talked about your responsibility as a parent and a teacher. About my responsibilities to not kill myself.
I've done it. Do you know what I'm really enjoying this week?
Oh, good for you.
No.
Any reason in particular?
No. Hang on. You stuck in an extra question mark there.
What?
You assumed that I was saying, do you know what I'm really enjoying this week? What I actually said was, do you know what I'm really enjoying this week?
Oh. What are you really enjoying this week?
Practicing.
Oh, okay. Any reason in particular?
Well, it's just kind of, I don't know, I seem to be getting organised. I mentioned that book, the Fear Bubble thing, and I started reading that. I seem to be getting organised and doing stuff.
Having his midlife crisis.
Oh, for fuck's sake. If you believed that, I would have been having my midlife crisis for the last 15 years, according to you lot.
Yeah, well, we're not sure when you're going to die, so we want to have our bases covered.
Yep. But, I mean, looking at my life, actually, the last 15 to 20 years, even though there have been a couple of wobbles, have been the most stable of my entire life, so...
Yeah, it's not saying that a midlife crisis is necessarily a bad thing. It's just a sort of look-on thing.
the word crisis
Yeah, I mean,
can be a good thing.
Yeah. As the Facebook pages of ants in their 40s would say, the Japanese
Ants.
word aunts. I don't fucking know.
Ants, like as in like opposite of uncles, do you mean? Or I was thinking like Bug's Life kind of ants.
No.
How long do they live?
Depend on the species. I'd imagine usually a couple of years though. Insects don't tend to live that long.
I'm pretty sure ants are human, aren't they, normally?
Oh, those ones. It depends how many people they piss off.
Nobody you're referring to in particular. This seems to be a very random conversation, but it's just kind of... I think we've given up, haven't we?
I strive to embody the vibe of the cool ant with this outfit.
Let's absolve responsibility of our output.
No, as the Facebook page of ants in their 40s would say,
hang on,
the Japanese word for crisis is the same for opportunity.
Coolant.
Yeah, the gay one.
Hang on. You got a gay ant?
I don't think so, but it's a vibe.
What the fuck are you talking about?
It's a vibe.
What's a vibe?
The cool ant.
Okay. I can't speak.
The one who doesn't hug you to death and respects you.
Are you talking about a person?
No, not particularly. I'm talking about a vibe. I don't know if you have this ant, but I don't know if I do.
Have I got any ants?
Let's check.
This is really weird today.
I think the thing is that my brain has been corroded by the internet, so now I am impossible to understand by people who aren't chronically online.
That's why I'm having such a good time this week.
Oh, you disconnected yourself?
Not fully, but the last 3 days, certainly, maybe more, I have abandoned my... quite heavily abandoned my addiction to my phone. I don't take it downstairs with me when I go down for breakfast, so I don't actually even look at my phone, what's on my phone, until after I've had breakfast.
I tell you what's a good motivator for that: wearing clothes with no pockets, because then you have to carry it everywhere.
Yeah. But even to the point where I was thinking, do you know what? I can't be arsed with actually putting it in my pocket and stuff. Will I get one of them smartwatch things? But then I thought, I don't even need to tell the time either. You know, if you're in a house, you're pretty much always near a clock, near enough to...
I mean,
it's anxiety.
All the analog clocks in our houses are permanently switched off because the ticking drives us insane. But
yeah, but that's only so that you can have the one in the living room set at 2 minutes to midnight permanently.
Oh, did you do that?
Yeah.
Nice. Anyway.
I don't know what the time is now.
Well, there's only about...
No, I mean...
3 clocks in front of you.
No, I mean the doomsday clock.
Oh, I think it was set to like 15 minutes to midnight a while back.
I'm sure it's nearer than that. It's probably gone up since we started increasing our nuclear arsenal.
A lot of what Trump was doing seemed to be driving it up. Particularly at the start of the year when we thought World War III was going to be the worst of our worries. No, wait, that's just... here we go. 100 seconds to midnight. Oh, fuck.
100 seconds? That's less than 2 minutes.
Yep.
It is I don't stop. Just turn the fucking internet off. I've just been saying how I've I've had a great week because I've disconnected. I think we. Thing is, yes, it's important to stay updated, but I think and I think this probably happens to a lot of people, is that it's not necessarily that it's disproportionate, but constant exposure to global media.
It's literally the only way I can talk to my friends right now, so I'll stay on the internet, thank you.
Well, yeah, but it's kind of, yeah. I suppose I understand, and probably at your age that's kind of important. But I actually have had to turn off my notifications because I don't actually want to talk to my friends when they want to talk to me all the time. Like they're not really friends, I suppose. They're more colleagues. I mean, they are friends, but you know what I mean. It's like sometimes you just want to, like, I'm out of the office, kind of.
Yeah, Craig. I don't know if you ever messaged my dad, but
He voice messaged me last week, actually.
Oof, was it a sexy message?
It was, yeah, and I voice messaged a sexy one back.
Okay, well,
I can't remember what it was. It was, oh yeah,
fapping onto your phone's microphone.
This or that. It was a this or that thing.
Oh, okay.
Which I have to admit I haven't listened to for ages. I'm sorry, Craig. But it's because I'm not out delivering pizzas. I don't get as much of a chance. I still do listen to podcasts at home when I'm getting dressed, when I'm smothering myself in moisturizer all over my naked body. I listen to podcasts then.
Okay, I'm gonna need to drink for that.
It's a medical thing. It's 'cause
I'm sure it is.
It is. My skin would fall off otherwise.
I'm sure that's someone's thing. Exfoliate.
That's not. Is that a Silence of the Lambs thing?
I don't fucking know. I don't fucking care.
Anthony Hopkins is good actor. My Oblivion thing's wonky.
Oh. They can't see that.
No. Did you make that?
No, Binyana, because she's actually talented.
Do you think we should call it a night?
No, I'm having a great time. Right.
Yeah, right.
Responsibility to, let's say, the
podcast.
No, to the planet. See, it's difficult. Like, I can, because I think I know what you'd think about this, but like, corporations' responsibility to humanity, do you think that they can fulfill that while still being corporations?
I suppose you'd be getting into the definition of a corporation then, wouldn't you?
Do you think private interest can be socially responsible?
Ultimately, I don't think I think it would be very difficult for that to be the primary motivator. But there are varying degrees of responsibility which can be achieved. Yeah, I mean, I suppose you're talking about the sort of political makeup of the planet, really, aren't you, when you're talking about private corporate responsibility, because...
See, I asked this because a sort of new idea has come into my consciousness after that really long conference. They had a speaker there who, forgotten their name, but they run basically a bunch of social enterprises, as they call them, I think.
Right.
Which basically the idea is, they function like a sort of boring company, like delivering documents, that sort of thing, but at the same time they'd deliver like period pads, or I suppose maybe now vaccines, or something like that,
Right.
while going about their regular business, just rather than having waste from like empty trucks.
Yeah. Yeah. I see what you mean. Yeah.
To that sort of idea. I mean, I think that's more. It sort of raised some questions in my mind because it's sort of like, sure, that's good in theory,
Is
but
is that not a bit like sort of carbon offsetting? In that, I mean, because essentially, what happens? There must come a point at which there has to be a balance achieved, where, like, if a company is doing particularly well, then it's likely that their trucks will end up being full.
there's a ton of waste, even if they're doing really well.
Waste what though?
I mean, like, even like waste of road space or people's time, or I mean, quite often food waste as well. Waste of resources, that sort of stuff. Which, I mean, from a business perspective, is bad as well. But
Yeah, I mean, I know some supermarkets now give a lot of their wastage to food banks and stuff. I think some of it they're not.
a lot of
allowed
them
to.
still lock their bins so the homeless can't get in.
Yeah.
Which is just kind of despicable when they throw out like perfectly good food.
Yeah. I mean, some of that will be down to legal issues. Like, for instance, obviously, a loaf of bread that's on its best before date or use by date is not going to cause too much damage. But if
about the stuff that's like kind of slightly wonky.
Yeah. Well, I mean, some supermarkets actually sell that at a cheaper price.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's been movements towards that, and that's the reason for that. But yeah.
But would that have happened without the public pressure to do that? Because there is a public desire for that kind of thing, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, basically, I think the main reason that they've started adopting like fair trade products properly is because there's a lot of desire for it.
But is there a balance then between, like, a supermarket has to be seen or likes to be seen to be contributing to social responsibilities to enough of an extent that it will attract customers, or at least not repel customers because they're not looking like they are not giving a shit. But once they've kind of achieved that level of respectability, if you like, then they don't have to strive much beyond that because...
I mean, it's sort of forward-facing, I guess in a very literal sense, virtue signalling. But then you look at like the practices that they don't really show that publicly tend to be a lot more objectionable, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to mention any brand names, and it's important that we don't.
Why?
Because I could lose my job.
Yeah.
But I do know that, and I'm sure it's not the only one, but I do know of a certain fast food chain who may serve, for example, potato wedges as one of their dishes.
Like wedges? Or is this a different thing?
It's a different thing. I wouldn't know about how their procedures work.
Okay.
No, I don't think they do make potato wedges, do they?
I don't fucking know. I should.
But with that and also the individual portions of like sort of chicken wings and stuff like that, all the side things, at the beginning of the day when orders aren't coming in that much, the staff in the shop basically spend a reasonable amount of time basically dividing all of the potato wedges and or chicken wings, chicken portions, whatever, into individual bags, small plastic bags. So basically every single day you've got hundreds and hundreds of small plastic bags having a portion put into each of them, so that when they're ordered later in the day when it's busy, you can just pick up a bag and there's your portion. So I mean that's an example, and they don't. I mean, I don't think it would be that difficult for those to be made biodegradable. I mean, we use
that is quite literal backdoor sorts of policies, but
we do have our food waste bin thing has like a sort of biodegradable bag that it comes in, so it wouldn't be difficult to do that, but they don't. And there's a lot of packaging, not just what you see on the shelves, but a huge amount of packaging. For instance, I find it quite interesting that a lot of the time you'll get recyclable packaging arriving in shrink wrapped in plastic. You know, I mean, like, for instance, folding up cardboard boxes that take away food may be distributed in to the consumer, but arriving on pallets that are shrink wrapped in plastic. As you know, I mean, obviously everybody tends to recycle the cardboard, but yeah, we've still got a long way to go with recycling, definitely. We've got a long way to go with everything, really. I mean, sorry. We should call this the monthly yawn.
I don't think that would sell as well.
We're not selling well anyway.
No,
people that come along and listen to us and are disappointed that it's not some kind of sexual torture podcast.
Oh, does it exist? Should listen to this.
I don't know, actually.
They probably do.
You ever heard of audio porn?
Sadly, yes, and I do not want to have this conversation.
Oh dear. Go on then. Try and stretch it out some more.
What responsibility do you think really everyone should have at like a fairly base level?
I
mean, another question would be, do you think it's even possible to really assign any sort of universal responsibility when different people have different capabilities?
No, because everyone's unique anyway. Our sod responsibility. Do you know what I mean?
Not really.
I mean, personal responsibility, like in terms of behaviour, in terms of like, I mean, for instance, having a bit of a drink and putting a shit podcast together. This doesn't seem like a responsible thing to do. I understand what you mean, yeah, about things like looking after the planet. That's a different thing.
But like, so the concept of responsibility itself, like I can get saying, oh, well, these responsibilities that are being placed to me either aren't reasonable or they're not really useful.
I think there's a lot of misplaced responsibility kind of attributed to people, but also a lot of responsibility absent that should be there, if you know what I mean. So I think a lot of people are expected to be responsible in ways that are actually no fucking use to anyone, and not held to account for the things that would really be helpful if they were. It's kind of skewed. Like fiscal responsibility. What the fuck is that?
Well, I think you've possibly heard it before.
Corporate
maybe
responsibility
but
to the shareholders.
Well, yeah. Where basically, if you're $1 million or pounds in debt, then the bank will be a lot nicer to you than if you're £1,000 in debt.
Yeah.
It's all about the ability to pay and how much they have to actually lose.
There's a load of details come out of some of the furlough payments that have been made on the COVID thingy, being traced to companies that are owned by, like, the Saudi royal family and billionaire companies and stuff like that, which is not ideal.
I don't know what this is anymore, but what other ideas do you have for this topic, or just generally to just have a bit of a natter, I suppose?
My mind's gone blank.
You seem to be struggling.
Yeah, I feel like I'm under pressure. I feel responsible for being entertaining to people that have made the effort and taken the time to actually listen to us. I feel like I have a responsibility toward them to actually be a fuck ton better than I actually am being.
I mean, I think people that take the time to listen to us,
what, though?
Like, enjoy that, though.
Do you know what, though? Fuck it. It's not like anyone's paying for this.
Yeah, Craig is, though.
Yeah, sorry, Craig. Well, no, he's not. Well, he is a little bit. He's our only Patreon.
Yeah.
And it's very gratefully received. But let's face it, I mean, of all our listeners, I think I would possibly feel the least responsible to him because of the amount of shit that I've listened to him spouting.
I mean, I regularly shit talk him, so...
They've had complaints, apparently.
Oh, from who?
Well...
About who?
Reviews and complaints. I was just listening to one of the... I don't know, somebody was moaning about them always bad-mouthing Scousers or something.
What?
Well, they all pick on Craig, don't they, a bit? And they're always saying about Scousers being thieves and criminals, basically.
I mean...
No, don't, because they've had complaints. No, it's all meant in jest, I'm sure. Should we see if we can insult someone?
I'm sure we can. I feel like my existence is an insult to somebody's life, which I enjoy. See, I strive to eventually reach the aesthetic where
what's going to happen?
Just by like walking down the street, I make someone's day and ruin another person.
Yeah. Do you think we're going to emerge from this year? This. Do you think we're going to be back properly? Do you think we're going to be going to uni properly in September?
I mean, I think that's what they are planning for, and seems to be on track for that.
How statistically likely do you think it is? It's probably wrong to ask for an opinion on this because statistics isn't an opinion-based thing. But how likely do you think it is that we're going to this year succeed in avoiding a situation where another variant that the vaccination won't work for is going to emerge?
I mean, I'm thinking more along the lines of a whole new pandemic, which is going to be a lot more dangerous, or really in combination with the very rapidly rising threat of climate change, which we'll have to be dealing with we've been dealing with over the last few decades, so not very well, but
fascism, genocide.
Yeah, but I mean, sort of in terms of what's big in terms of what would determine like disease control, like habitat destruction is kind of the main thing driving the increased likelihood of diseases emerging that have the potential to become a pandemic.
Yeah.
And this one, although its effects have been pretty devastating, is far from the worst that we see in terms of pandemics. So one could be as deadly as something like malaria and spread as effectively as something like coronavirus or something even more infectious, then we're fucked.
Well, we say we're fucked. It's not like an extinction level thing, but it would drastically alter society. Is that what you mean?
I mean, I think it's sort of
like permanently, or at least in terms for a very long time.
I think people, and I think you were trying to avoid saying this because you knew what I was going to say afterwards, of in September going back to normal, which is...
Yeah. Well, I was saying going back to uni, but it's like, well, we haven't actually... I mean, you've been in, but we haven't got a normal to return to because it hasn't been normal since we've been there.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose normal generally in terms of society as a whole, which... And I don't feel like what has been going on for the past really forever should really be a norm, but...
No, you're talking about a definition of normal then, aren't you? Just normal really has been accepting the unacceptable, really.
This is probably a bit big to get into 3 drinks in and an hour and a half into a podcast, but I think that idea of normalcy and resistance to change, which I have seen both in myself and you guys, plenty of other people, is sort of a manufacturing of neoliberalism. Because I don't think when people talk about like, oh, it's one of these two, like in the American political system, talking about like the Democrats and Republicans, I don't think people realize that before Reagan, the system was quite a bit different. Not good, but quite a bit different to how it works today.
Well, that kind of came in line with Thatcherism, didn't it?
But basically every politician or every like prime minister, every major politician has been broadly in line with neoliberalism since Thatcher and Reagan.
Right.
And so we're kind of trapped in this worshipping the free market economy at the expense of all else, and that just being a base assumption of our society that this must be how things operate because, well, you saw what happened to the Soviet Union, that was terrible. Not like there's like, this isn't like a binary option here.
Yeah. But the thing what you're saying about sort of resistance to change, I think that kind of comes back to what I was talking about, that book that I'm reading, The Fear Bubble, is that all of that really, and the anxiety stuff that's been going on, and pretty much everything that's a big problem with society is based on fear. And it is that underlying fear that is basically the driving force in our society at the moment, is the fear of everything. And the resistance to change is kind of based on a fear of failure and a fear of kind of the unknown. And, you know, it's for me, really, we need to be looking at, rather than being afraid of things when you're not in the zone that you need to be afraid of. Actually, I think the biggest thing we have to fear is that things will stay either the same as they are now or on the same trajectory.
I am hoping that particularly I think I'm sort of projecting what my own experiences have been of the last few years, politically speaking. I mean, I was always pretty left-wing from as early as I can remember really caring at all about politics. But like the last few years particularly, I guess I've been radicalized, you would say. I mean, I think anarchy is a fairly radical political philosophy, and I'm okay with that. Like, I think we need radical change, so...
The thing is, though, I think what you define as anarchy, I don't think is the same as what people who fear anarchy define as anarchy. Because I think people who fear anarchy are actually basing that on the worst of humanity. That those... they're kind of still working from that idea of liberalism, and that... I
mean, you can argue philosophically whether or not evil people per se exist that are going to do bad things. I mean, I think there'll always be people that do irresponsible things, but I don't really know if you could call them per se definitively irresponsible or definitively bad outside of whatever. Anyway, but I find the system where, sure, there are going to be people that will be like that, but they're not the ones in charge, like, much better than the one that we're currently in.
Well, I mean, the problem is, I mean, it's a fear of that kind of criminal element, and the problem is that the criminal element is actually driven by levels of poverty and social inequality. One of the things that I've learned in the course I'm doing at the moment is that in Scotland, and this was based on data from 2015 to 2016, so I'm not sure if it's got better or worse, but 25% of Scotland's children are living in poverty. And to kind of put that in context, basically, if they held hands in a line, it would stretch from Carlisle to Edinburgh.
I'm not sure, maybe at one point, if I would be included amongst those.
I would say you probably have been at some point. Certainly when do you know, DWP, the fucked up our universal credit claim for months. I mean, the only reason that it hasn't caused us major inconvenience is because we're not really having to spend that much at the moment, because we're not going anywhere and doing anything much. But they've now paid it back. But it's you know, you kind of think to yourself, well, you know, we're lucky enough not to have been in a position where, and I'm talking a considerable amount of money now that they've paid us back, that they've owed us from going back as far as last October.
Yeah.
And while it hasn't made a damaging difference to us in our situation at the moment, there'll be a lot of people for whom that could literally be life or death. You know?
There's people that it has been.
So it's hardly any surprise that when we live in a society that sort of thing is not just possible, but actually increasingly the norm. Because I don't know about anyone else out there, but anyone who has to deal with, I mean, corporations can be shit, yeah, but actually they tend to be at the better end of the wedge because they've got to compete with each other. But certainly government departments are just obscenely incompetent, to the point where you think, is this just incompetence or is it deliberate mismanagement so they can get away with...
I mean, yeah, you'll get incompetent people within that system. I mean, that's part of the system itself, but also just lack of funding, various quotas that are not enough for the amount of people that need to access.
But this is exactly where that money that we were talking about, defunding the police, should be targeted.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more aware of the discourse around this based on America because a lot of the conversations around defunding the police and abolishing the police have come to the limelight, at least for me, during last year around the protests around the killing of George Floyd and others.
Yeah. But, I mean, to try and take it away from that kind of confrontational kind of flashpoint moment, which is obviously something that really does need to be looked at, but to just try and look at it from a different angle, actually, you'd be making a much bigger impact on crime figures by addressing the poverty issues than by cracking down on criminal behaviour. Because the vast majority of people that commit crimes aren't doing it because they want to be criminals. Ideally, it's not their kind of ambition in life to be a criminal.
Oh, that's fucking stupid. I'm trying to find the breakdown for Los Angeles budget because it's surprisingly inflated towards the police. No, that is not.
Well, I mean, I know it's not exactly the police, but it's still in with security, isn't it? The thing about 1 week, the government saying there's not enough money to give any more than 1% pay rise, which is actually a pay cut to nurses, and then spending $24 billion on national security the next week.
This is Los Angeles city budget. Spends 1.7 is that million?
Billion.
1.7 billion on police. 1.3 billion. So they spend more on police than anything else in the city of Los Angeles. 1.3 billion on tax stuff. 743 million on human resource benefits. 600 million on fires. About the same on wastewater. Stuff like infrastructure.
Total city budget is 10.71 billion, and basically almost a fifth of that goes on funding the police.
I'm not sure if maybe they have a separate thing for education. Oh, Minneapolis, the city in which George Floyd was killed. That's the police budget. Yep, police. Oh no, Public Works, by the looks of it, is the largest thing. But they spend far more on police than health, or on fire, capital improvements. Spend about the same as on housing, the police in Minneapolis. I mean, I'm aware of that sort of dialogue more because that's come up a lot more with America. I'm not sure what the breakdown would look like because the way that local authorities run is very different in the UK because we don't have states. At least for the most part, unless you count Scotland as a federal state or Wales as a federal state because it's kind of really funky constitutionally. That's a technical term. It's funky constitutionality.
I like that.
Because the UK kind of doesn't have a constitution, but it also kind of does, and depends on who you ask.
Do you think we'll get... First of all, do you think we'll get an independence referendum?
I think we'll get one. I'm just not sure if it will be legally binding. And I'm not sure when is another thing.
And if we do you think we'll win it? I've deliberately been vague about my terminology there.
Are you assuming that I'm for yes in this case?
I'm not assuming anything. Let's get your answer first, and then.
No, I think the UK media is probably too powerful for the moment this year, especially with how they've been able to sort of weaponize the crimes of a fucking rapist to...
Well, I just don't get how I mean, it's kind of counterproductive to call people fucking idiots, but how is it not just incredibly transparent, the whole thing? How anyone who has their mind changed by this?
I mean, I think the SNP's support is... I mean, it's changed by different factors, but I think even if they don't believe the story per se, like that has a subconscious effect in where you see, oh, Nicola Sturgeon must resign in like every article in major papers that have nothing to do with Scottish politics.
Yeah, the other thing is, like, obviously, I know the Greens are for independence. There's another party that are for Scottish independence as well, isn't there? I can't remember who is that. Is that Scottish Lib Dems or
no? Lib Dem definitely not.
Scottish Labour.
Scottish Labour were, I think, somewhat split on whether they should go towards independence, but they had a leadership election recently, and the guy that they picked is basically a Starmerite, if one of those exists.
All right, okay.
But yeah, most of the ones that are big UK-wide aren't pro-independence.
I don't know if my phone's about to run out of battery. It's gone a bit dimmer. I thought it was plugged into a charging thing, but it doesn't seem to be. We should maybe finish soon then, because I think my phone might be about to die. I could try and plug it in.
Scottish...
Carry on.
The Scottish Greens and the Scottish National Party are actually governing in coalition because, as I said, it's very difficult to get a majority government. So, I mean, I don't think technically in coalition, I don't know. But basically, this means that Greens have a lot of influence on SNP policy.
Yeah, they always seem to be able to get decisions on...
Which is basically the reason that I'm going to be getting free bus travel next year.
Yeah.
Which is good. I have to keep fucking going through my wallet to get little coins out.
Okay.
I'm annoyed by bus drivers, but I can't fucking walk. So.
Who isn't?
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, I mean, this is kind of not really relevant to you if you're not in Scotland or like not doing anything to do with Scottish politics. But like, if your views broadly align with mine, depending on which area you live in, I think I would vote probably Greens for my party choice and possibly SNP for my constituency choice. But
I think it's a weird thing. There's an awful lot of English folk that I know who actually not would like to move to Scotland, but like
I forgot.
Totally agree with the Scots wanting independence because they don't want their country either.
There's a Northern independence movement.
Northern? Oh, what? Northern England, do you mean?
Yeah, I think it's like the Northumbria Party or something.
Right.
And they, I think, got second place in a by-election recently.
Really?
Which like ate into Labour's majority there.
Yeah.
They didn't lose, but yeah, they're gaining ground in the north by the looks of it. I mean, I don't think they're going to like start a secessionist movement, but it'd be nice. Just have
weird.
The north chilling out with Scotland.
It would be weird living in Berwick upon Tweed, I think.
Oh, they're kind of... I mean, I've probably said this before, but they've swapped borders like 37 times since it's been like a recognisable thing. And so they kind of act sort of half Scottish still. Like they play in the Scottish League.
That was a weird thing. We went up that side of the country once travelling back from England, and it was a Sunday. We were driving back and we were like really pissed off because the supermarket was shut at like 4 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon.
Oh, you fucking... What's that about? I don't
know if that still happens.
Half our churches are pubs here.
Yeah, they're really good pubs as well. Slains Castle's ace. Have you ever been in there?
No. literally the only
very
places I've
gothic.
ever been where you can like get shit faced are.
It's really difficult to find the toilets.
I've been with you, so
Yeah, it's really difficult to find the toilets there because the door's actually part of a bookshelf.
that's so cool, but also just kind of weird.
And it's got that kind of haunted vibe. They've got the seven deadly.
Half of Aberdeen does right now. I went into Union Square the other day.
I want a t-shirt.
It's fucking deserted. It's
Yeah, well, it will be at the moment.
Yeah, I mean Starbucks was open, so.
But well, it must have been a while ago because
Starbucks was like a week ago.
in Union Square.
Yeah.
Oh no, yeah, sorry, that was after. I don't know what the rules are at the moment. But anyway, yeah, what was I going to say? Yeah, I won a T-shirt on my stag night at Slains Castle for completing the 7 Deadly Sins cocktail challenge. There's 7 cocktails that are named after the 7 Deadly Sins, and you have to drink them all to get a T-shirt, free T-shirt.
Are they like particularly linked to the sins, or is it just like different colours?
I can't remember.
No, I don't imagine you could. You were like, oh, I woke up with this T-shirt. Wonder where that came from. Anyway, yeah, shall we be wrapping up?
Yeah, let's. I want to go watch some laughter.
It was a fine episode. I think we talked some stuff through.
It was laid back.
Aye, but that's what this thing is.
Yeah. Just, yeah.
If you're interested and if you want to link it, just because I like to boost my friend, her channel is Houstonium and she has a very
You like to do what
video.
to your friends?
She has a very informative video on Scottish devolution. We can link to that in the description.
Houstonium. Oh, you're going to make me put something in the description.
You do have to do your job sometimes.
I just copy and paste. All right. Well, put the link on the text file and I'll copy it into the description.
Okay. Well, okay, fine. Anyway. Yes.
Let's go. Let's go watch some outdated comedy. What?
I'm frozen.
Let it go.
Are we ready
the
to...
champions.
Do you have anything else to say? Any final thoughts?
Bollocks on toast.
Anyway.
Marmite milkshake.
I have been Fireball.
And I've been the Orbiter.
And this has been Breaking Bollocks, episode 79.
Responsibility. Oh, I keep forgetting I've had a haircut.
This podcast is part of the After Dark Podcast Network.